Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Friday, the 10th of April 2015. The year is moving right along. So I want to welcome you to For the Record this morning, whether or not you're listening here in the Cayman Islands or if you're listening overseas via the web. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the management and staff of Radio Cayman, and it is geared specifically to keep you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Dorrit Connor, and you're welcome, certainly welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open because this is your radio station. You own it, and you are allowed to participate in whatever we do here on Radio Cayman. So you can join me on For the Record through our phone lines, our toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And, of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, then you can email us at For the Record, one word, For the Record at candw.ky. Today we have in the studio with us Mr. Steve McField, prominent local attorney, and Mr. Christopher Saunders, prominent CPA, domino player, political pundit, everything that you want to name. We have lots of things we want to talk about today. We want to talk about Jamaica. We want to talk about U.S. President Obama's visit to Jamaica. Certainly a highlight, for the Jamaican people, and it appears as if he was, well welcomed there. We want to talk about the minimum wage for the Cayman Islands. Haven't had a real opportunity to dissect the whole thing. I'm not sure if my guests have, but of course we will have the Honorable Minister, Tara Rivers, on with us on Monday morning to discuss it as well. So we would want to hear from her before we go into any depth into it, but we certainly can discuss what was said during the press briefing as well as what has been published. Before I go to our guests, you continuously hear me talk about drivers in the morning, especially anytime before 7 o'clock. And I just want to say to the driver of a black Ford SUV, and this time I was able to capture a license plate, 141883. The way that you drive, you're endangering other people's lives on the road. You are not a Kurt Busch. You are not a Mario Andretti. You're not a Jeff Gordon. So please don't try to drive like a race driver on the roads of the Cayman Islands. If you need to get to work on time, leave home on time. But don't try to get to work at someone else's expense and the risk of causing them harm and injury, not to mention possible harm and injury to yourself. So I'm calling you out this morning, Mr. Driver or Mrs. Driver. I'm not sure who was behind the wheel. Plate number 141883, a black Ford SUV. Take care on the roads. The life that you save may be your own. Gentlemen, with that, again, it's Friday, and it's your show for now. Mr. McField, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. For the Record. It's good to be back with you again on Friday, and it's good to be back with my comrade Chris Saunders.
And it's good to be back. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Let's start with the, some of the good news, exciting news. Jamaica, certainly a huge win for Jamaica in terms of being able to have U.S. President Barack Obama visit them. And in reading one of the articles, I see where when he got off the plane and on the tarmac, and when Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller greeted him, he said, "See, I kept my promise." And obviously, at a prior meeting, she issued an invitation for him to visit Jamaica, and he did.
2 years ago, she actually did. The press did report it, but I think it's great. The one thing I would have loved more, it was a CARICOM as a government meeting. I think Cayman is an associate member, I would have loved for us to at least try to push a little bit more, because I mean, clearly now, especially with all the different happenings in Cuba, and the U.S. also looking to use the Summit of the Americas and CARICOM to kind of build better relationships with Cuba. This is a good time for us to try to at least get a little seat at the table or something, and make sure at least our position is represented in some respect.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Mr. Macfield, for us to become a full-fledged member of CARICOM, we would need the UK's approval on that. I believe when we were considering membership, we looked at the, or whether, I'm not sure whether or not the rules that govern membership in the CARICOM, if there's any indication there that you have to be, a sovereign,
I think you have
independent
to be a sovereign
nation.
country.
But
Yes.
it's either Montserrat or Anguilla, one of those that is a full member of CARICOM, and it was as a result of some quirk that the British weren't aware of it, but they have full membership in CARICOM. I'm going to look it up online and find it, either Anguilla or Montserrat. But if any of our listeners out there recall that, please give me a call. Samuel, Mr. Cabinet Secretary, if you're listening, if you know, send me a text, in relation to that. Otherwise, I'll look it up in the meantime. But there is one overseas territory that by some quirk, I recall it being discussed during the constitutional talks.
Yeah, I think Obama's visit to Jamaica was awesome for the Jamaican people and for their culture and for their history, because he's only the second president that has ever visited Jamaica.
Reagan,
Reagan
almost 33 years to the day.
To the day, and but the disappointing thing about it was the amount of security that they insisted on, and that the majority of the people didn't actually get to see him or to greet him, because he came on Air Force One, and then he was taken to a park camp by helicopter, and while the people lined the streets to try to see his limousine or try to see his car, that never happened. I think that was a disappointment, but I was surprised that. And I wasn't surprised. I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised that he had this interaction with the youth leaders in Jamaica at the UWI campus. He was a youth leader once,
right?
And I think that it shows you that he still has that position to reach down to the youth and to try to bring them up and try to drag them up. But he had a good exchange with a youth. Who was asking him about what he thought about Jamaica's new laws and decriminalizing the private use of marijuana. And Obama said, well, it's no silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet.
Yes.
And it's true. It's not the silver bullet for all to solve all things. And when you look at when he started explaining what he meant, he was saying that there's the poverty, there's all of the other things that marijuana. He said one thing that Jamaica has to be aware of the big corporations coming in and taking it over and making the money themselves. He said that's one thing. But I like, and the other thing was I don't think it was a surprise visit though. But they said it was a surprise visit to the Bob Marley Museum. I think that was all arranged.
Yeah, I'm sure it was arranged, but it wasn't announced. It wasn't publicly announced.
Yeah. Yes. So, but in all, I wish that our people of color could get a visit from someone significant like that in our society. It would sort of be a boost to us to know that we're not the most downtrodden people. And that yes, we can. And I think that that's the message that he brought to Jamaica, and I was so happy with the Jamaican people, and their response to this great leader of the West. Sometimes I don't agree with him with everything. I don't agree with him with everything, but
And that's normal.
yeah, yeah. But he's a he's a great charismatic figure, and he reminds me of his white counterpart, the Kennedys.
Yes, yes.
You know, he has that aura about him that people want to touch him, and he also reminds me of Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau, when he was in height of his power, his political power. But I wish I could have met him. I would have said some things to him, but we will never get that chance.
No, hold on, no, back up. Just so you're aware, I've received many calls already from people asking me to make sure that the next speaker bring is Obama when he demits office. So he's actually on my to bring list. So I mean, at Clinton before, so nothing wrong with bringing Obama. I think that'd be a great little touch. So no, that's not impossible. We have started bringing them here. So definitely something to work on.
Now, there was a big hoopla about whether it was a state visit or not. And eventually, when, what's her name, Faulkner?
Yeah,
Yes,
Sandra.
The information minister in Jamaica, when she had her press briefing, I believe that was on Tuesday, that she pointed out that it was not a state visit, even though it was first announced that it would be a state visit, but it was not.
I think that worked out actually quite well too, because now with a state visit, well, I mean, the Governor General, who's a Queen representative, is actually the head of state, and there's actually more cost to be borne by the local government. By it being a working visit, at least some of the cost then, in a sense, is borne by the U.S. president as opposed to the Jamaican government, which I know that in itself cost them a pretty penny in terms of what it is that they had to do, but I think that worked out well for them.
Okay. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve McFeel and Mr. Christopher Saunders. I also want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by LED, Lighting, Engineering, and Design, located on Dorsey with fabulous products, energy-saving equipment. And if you want to get your energy bill, your light bill down like Miss Georgette's, then maybe you want to check LED out. They will help you to save some money. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where, as your host, I have in the studio with me Mr. Steve McFeel and Mr. Christopher Saunders. We're starting out by discussing U.S. President Obama's trip to Jamaica. Certainly a big plus and for the Prime Minister, of Jamaica. This obviously has to boost her ratings, political ratings in Jamaica for delivering, on having President Obama visit Jamaica. Of course, it didn't come without, a downside to it in terms of we saw criticism, people criticizing the fact that roads were being paved and everything else. While there are austerity measures as far as the budget is concerned, that they're spending the money on this. Then there was the issue with the crab vendors, Heroes Circle, and all of the other vendors, the homeless in Kingston who were removed, as a result of it. And there are those who will say that some of these things should have remained there so that the president can see Jamaica as it is.
I'm one of those. I'm one of those that say that it should remain to see Jamaica as it is, because it's given people a false view of what the state of the economy and the state of the people really are, and what we do it here too. When we have royalty or some visitant, we line the streets with all the flags and we go and we clean up all the roads. And then tomorrow, the people who are underpaid and can't pay their mortgages and can't pay their light bill and can't buy water are going to continue. It's only for a day. And it's like what my grandfather used to say, it's only a 9-day wonder. That's what he used to say. But in all, and the only thing one thing I didn't like about it is the Minister for Communication, Jamaica Minister of Communication, Ms. Faulkner, when they destroyed all of the crab vendors' stalls, and she said, "Oh well, they were not as sturdy anyway."
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that was a little bit insensitive. But I will say this much: there are two things. I mean, what's kind of weird is that when you look at the U.S. News report on Obama's visit, it is completely different than, of course, the Jamaican side. I mean, for the U.S., many people see it, or many news media reported that it was more in line to kind of start curbing the Chinese influence within the Caribbean. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Jamaica, you look at different Bahamas, for example, major Caribbean countries, the Chinese is basically putting crazy investments inside those countries, especially infrastructure, literally buying influence. And if you consider the U.S. going back to the end of the Spanish-American War when the Monroe Doctrine came out, I mean, you right now have the Chinese operating literally unfettered in their backyard. And a lot of people saw it as America being so preoccupied with the war in the Middle East that they stop looking at their own backyard. You look at the Petro-Carib deal with Venezuela, for example, to Jamaica, that's actually worth 3% of their GDP and takes a massive strain off the country. So it's kind of one of those things now where the U.S. needs to assert their influence back within the Caribbean region. It is considered their fourth border, even from a security and everything standpoint. So the question is now, is from an IMF standpoint, where the U.S. is the dominant person who calls the shot within the IMF, is this an opportunity to know where, Obama will say to Sister Portia, listen, I will ease you up a little bit on the IMF, that kind of stuff. I mean, unless Jamaica gets something tangible from this, then I'm going to tell you it's not worth it. But if they can end up with lower energy costs, in terms of what the U.S., who's now the world's largest energy producer, can do something for them and help them on the IMF side, by all means. And you know what, I do sympathize with the vendors, and it's kind of one of those things. He is coming back. He kept his word to come visit, and he gave her his word that he's coming back with his family. So maybe when he come back, he will see the other side of the Jamaica, the tourism side. But if you have international press that's following the president, and it's kind of one of those things where you want to put your best foot forward regardless of what. No one wants to be seen as some rundown type stuff. It's almost like human nature. Your relatives coming to visit, you kind of spruce up those.
I like the analogy that our Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller gave. She said, when people come, when family comes, to come to visit you, you clean up your house and everything. So I like that. But speaking of investments, Chris, we see a $68 million investment in regional youth. We see also in energy fund that it was announced, clean energy projects for the Caribbean as well. So I think we will see tangible results from that. I'm told that we have one caller online, so we're going to take that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Osi. How are you?
Good morning, Jan. How are you doing?
Good morning, guys. Morning.
Morning, Jan.
Mr. Maxfield, I agree with him. We're going to better cap up the island for a few hours, as the state of Jamaica has done. And I really truly believe that we should keep our place as clean as possible at all times so we don't have to go and do no extra work. Mr. Maxfield, I'm quite sure you know by now I'm a taxi driver, and I'm driving all kind of roads now that I haven't been on in a long time. And I just can't believe how the roadsides are with the bush growing out into the road, and there's no maintenance being done. I don't know who's doing it, but I see where I don't know if it's TUC going around cutting the limbs out from by their lines, which is great. But now they're leaving the bigger part of the limb still hanging over the main street. I mean, those limbs are hanging over there, even though they may bloom beautiful when it's time to bloom, but they are dangerous. Crossing there one day, it could drop on your car. I was driving through Cayman Bay just a couple of days ago, and just before I got to one certain tree, a limb dropped down the road. I'm like, whoa! 2 more seconds, that limb would have dropped, and there's those big old palm trees. That limb would have dropped on my vehicle. So I really believe that, I don't know if it's the NRA or whoever's part of the government with making sure the outside roads and all this excess bush that's hanging over, and these excess limbs that's hanging over into the main roads or side roads. They should let the owner, find the owner responsible to have these trees trimmed. If they're not trimmed within so much time, you charge them. We're living here in a zone that nobody's caring about anything. We're just going day to day just to pay a bill and forgetting how dangerous things are for the other individual who has to cross it. Come on, man.
Well, ma'am.
And OC,
yeah,
one minute. OC, yesterday I was crossing a public beach. Remember I called you about the public beach?
Oh, yes.
OC, if you had seen the taxi on the beach itself, you know, we got that two-tone sign now. They crossed that two-tone sign and going up onto the beach to look for the tourists with their taxis. OC, if somebody don't step out there, we're going to ruin this tourism business just through greediness. And these taxi drivers, these so-called taxi drivers, these taxi drivers need to be penalized, suspended, and feel like not to be able to come out here and work because they're not doing the job right. They're not protecting us, and they're not protecting and making the tourists feel comfortable. They are driving on the beach, and it's not what someone told me. This is what I saw with my own eyes crossing the public beach yesterday. I don't know what public transport is doing, what the police department is doing. But we need some undercover guys working on that public beach down there, because when they take that beach away from us, I want to see what we're going to do then with our tourists when they got to go to the beach.
Certainly, we hear you on that, and we'll certainly bring it to the authorities' attention if they don't already know.
You're right. Yes, the CUC is responsible for clearing the lines or the debris and the trees around their power lines. That's their priority. That's their prerogative. And the bush that is hanging over the road is for the NRA. Now, one of the problems that we have in this country is that we do not have a road user fee, like other countries, so that those things can get done. Everything costs money, and the priority for the country now it's not the maintenance of roads and all those sort of things. The priorities are other things, and so without a road user fee, you're not going to be able to have that kind of maintenance done like it should. But there's no reason why you shouldn't have a small crew out by the that is paid by the NRA to make sure that doesn't happen. I have when I was on the board of the NRA, I used to always bring that matter up and talk about, for instance, up on Shamrock Road. When you go in the night, we have street lights up there, but sometimes you can't see them because they're covered by all of the trees and the bush, and they don't shine properly down in the road. And the NRA went out there and did some cleaning up of the bushes around the street lights. But now I see that they have gone right back to where they were. But ma'am, it's all about money, and it's all about it's all about the will to get things done. But we are going to have to at sometimes get money from the public to be able to do those kind of jobs.
What a sec, but people pay their vehicle license fee literally every year. I thought part of that, I mean...
That's not enough.
Yeah, but if that's the case, well, I mean, it goes back to a situation then where if something is enough, then you charge more. I mean...
But isn't the government being extremely generous? Because what about the responsibility of the landowners?
Yep.
They're the ones. If the tree is on their property, they should be the ones who are maintaining it.
Exactly.
So it doesn't overhang.
Well, we don't have a land clearing law. We don't have a law to land clear. But let me tell you what happened with the fees that was collected. There are the fees that are collected for by the government for a percentage of the fees on the duties on diesel, on gasoline, and the money you pay to get your car registered and driver's license. That goes into that's supposed to belong to what they call a roads fund.
Yep.
But there's no roads fund actually set up in the National Roads Authority law. That money goes into the central government, and when it increases, any minister can go in and parachute into it and take money out for their own ministry portfolio. It's not set aside. There should be what they call a roads board, a roads fund board. That money should go to the roads funds board, and then when the roads authority needs money, they go to the roads fund board who funds their projects.
Okay. You know, sir.
But when I went to the University of Birmingham and I took a course, because when I became a director of the roads authority, I didn't know what I was a director of. So I went to University of Burnham and I took a course in roads management and road financing, and I learned all this stuff. And I did a report when I came back, but nobody has taken a report and put it in and make it effective. It's sitting there somewhere where I recommended to have a roads funds board and a roads funds management, that the government would not be able to take the money that's supposed to go to fixing roads. It would be
You won't be able to mix it with the other funds. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve McFeel and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Please stay tuned. We're going to go to a time check and then the news, and then we'll be back after that. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Alan Steve McFeel and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Before we get back into the discussion, I just want to update our listening audience in relation to the CARICOM membership. Montserrat became a member of CARICOM on the 1st of May, 1974. So they go way back, 1974.
That was probably at the beginning of CARICOM.
Yes, because CARICOM was formed in 1973, I believe, as I look at it.
Just after, 1973.
45 years, 1973. And so that's why at that point in time it was a quirk, because the British, weren't as observant as they are now. Bermuda became an associate member on the 2nd of July 2003. Cayman Islands became associate member in May of 2002. And I recall getting a call from Bermuda when they were considering joining CARICOM, and they wanted to know what procedures we followed, what we went through in terms of becoming an associate member. And they actually put out a consultation paper and a discussion paper on joining CARICOM. Turks and Caicos Islands, in July of 1991, they were associate member. And Anguilla in July of 1999. So folks, if you're history buffs, or some people call it trivia. I don't call it trivia. I call it knowing your history.
Exactly.
That's information, there for you as well. Let's talk some about the Cayman Islands. Now, we've talked about Jamaica. And
Sorry, there's one thing I want to add on before we move on.
Sure.
Which Janet raised in our last call.
Yes.
One thing that really came out of this, as we were discussing in the break, is it goes to show the Jamaican people that if the government has the will to get something done, they can do it. It is that lack of will that has basically destroyed not just that country, well, economically speaking that is, but also other countries where people lack the will to actually do what is right. And when the time came, they stepped up and they showed the Jamaican people in such a short period of time they could have tackled this kind of problem. Then the question is now, why can't they tackle other problem with the same zeal?
Precisely.
That they did this one. Yeah.
And enthusiasm
exactly.
that they've done. Yeah. We have two callers online. First caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, talking about bringing this back to Cayman and cleaning up our backyard. I have a question for you, Mr. Connor. There is a property that is in Georgetown, right in the center of Georgetown, right behind Royal Bank. There's a pink building there. And as far as I understand, that property has been given to the government of the Cayman Islands for the people of the Cayman Islands by a lovely lady that used to live there in that property. That property is just sitting there in disrepair. And this
her name was Miss Arlette.
Yes. Yeah. And this has been over 8 years. And I have not seen anything being done with this property. Could somebody tell me what is going on with that property? Is that going to be just left there in disrepair?
I believe there may be some legal issues with it. My understanding is that she agreed to give the property to government, and all that she was asking was that the government took care of her during her old age and her illness, and she wanted to hand it over to social services or children and family services. I am not sure where it is now because I think there may be some claim by family members as well. But I also know that MLA Ard McLean, when he was a minister, he wanted to take that property. He wanted to retain the old Caymanian style property. He wanted to retain it as it is, as a historical site. But he also wanted to have bathrooms and stuff, amenities there for the tourists that came off the cruise ships, because that was one of the things that was lacking there. So it would serve two purposes, for people to visit, almost like a museum, and at the same time, for facilities. I believe there may still be some legal issues with the property, but I'll try to inquire to see if we can find out exactly where it's at. But the caller has a good point.
Well, if I can help the caller, I have some insight into it, because I was representing Miss Arlett in some situation before she deceased.
Okay.
She actually signed the property over to the government. She actually signed the land transfer forms out to the government, and for the consideration of the government taking care of her and paying her medical bills. And that, like the lady said, that was near 8 years ago. For some reason, today the government has not registered the transfer with the land registry. The transfer sat there for all of these years. The government didn't see fit to register the land transferred and have the land legally transferred into their names. And then Miss Arlett has a second cousin who she had a dispute with some time ago, and he was trying to claim the property. And as I explained, he was not in the class of people under the succession law to claim the property, because
You didn't have any legal standing.
he didn't have legal standing, because when a person dies intestate, that's without leaving a will, it's the surviving spouse and the surviving children, and if no surviving spouse and children, then it goes to the brothers and sisters of the full blood, and then if it's not brothers and sisters of the full blood, it goes to the brothers and sisters of the half blood. If none of them are surviving, it goes to the aunts and uncles. If none of them are surviving, it goes to the grandparents, and if none of them are surviving, then it goes bundle vacata to the crown. Now, so enable for some relative to claim the land, they have to put themselves into one of the classes of those people as survivors under the succession law, and explain. It's my opinion that person who now claiming the land, in fact, after he discovered that the land was not been transferred to the government legally, he put in letters of administration over the estate in order to claim the property. That's where it is now. And then the government put a caveat against the grant of letters of administration to him. And as I understand it from some of the members of the family, the government now is saying that they would probably remove the caveat, the objection to administration, and the family paid the money that they paid to Miss Arlett, and then that family member probably will take up letters of administration, and it will go to whoever I guess the administrator decides to go to. But it's a shame, because when I was advisor to Mr. Bush, the first premier, Minister Adams took me there and asked me to help him to get it done, and I promised that I would help him to complete the conveyance to the government, but of course they never called me back to do it. I even went and looked at the property, and as it is now, the government for some reason kept the transfer, never registered it, and now the government is in a legal dispute with one of the relatives of Mr. Arlett, a second cousin or a third cousin, who's claiming that he's the rightful that he has the right to take out letters of administration over the property, and the government now is seem to be waffling, and it's a shame, because She left it for the people, for the government and people of the Cayman Islands, as you said.
I guess the government doesn't want to seem to be like a land grabber, of sorts, if a family member has come forward. But like you said, that person has to have legal standing in order for that to take place.
You have to be one of the classes of people.
Yeah, we have 2 more callers online. Let's try to take those callers. Next caller. Good morning and welcome to For the Record.
OC?
Yes, welcome back there. And sorry about that before.
That's okay.
I think
That's okay. Yes, I'm going back to Mr. Maxfield. He was talking about no money here and there. Mr. Maxfield, we have been a tourist destination from day one. And all you can hear in Cayman from government after government that we have no law for this and no law for that, no money for this and no money for that. I asked him this morning, what is the purpose of having a government and not having no laws to protect this Cayman Island in aero capacity? If you go to American jaywalk, they give you a ticket. We are too relaxed and too comfortable here. That is why people is coming here and doing what they do, because the first thing they say, okay, man, they ain't got no law, they ain't got me to study, and blah, blah. And another thing, I was talking about the trees that CDC is cutting the middle out. That's fine. But they're leaving the bigger piece, which I know probably not their responsibility. They're going to protect their lines. Don't get me wrong, no. They're leaving the bigger pieces hanging over the road, which I think that the owners need to get out there and cut them down. And now OC and Mr. Maxfield and Mr. Sanders, why is it that CUC is covering just about every pole throughout the island? Is it because of the iguanas?
yes,
That's
it is.
right.
Are we going to try to get these iguanas under control before they control us? Who is out there to say, hey, we got to get rid of these iguanas? We have to do better than what we're doing, because this island is becoming a sheet metal throughout the island. You go in some yards, they got all 20, 30 trees.
I know. Tell me about it. I have it.
Me
Trying
too.
to protect my pears. Last year I didn't get a pear off my pear tree, an avocado a pear off. This year I go out there. I need to say to my neighbors when they see me looking up in the trees that I'm not crazy yet. I'm just looking up there trying to spot the iguanas and see what can be done with them. But every day I go out there and I'm looking up in the air.
And Mr. Maxfield, I don't know what more to say, but if we don't start getting some laws in this island, everybody's going to come here and run over us left, right, and center. Let me give an example. I'm going to let you guys go.
We have the laws. We just got to enforce them.
Yeah, I was behind Crossview just before yesterday driving. When I got to the roundabout there by Lime Tree, there was a white police car, but it didn't have no stickers on it, but the officer had a uniform on. And then I saw a lady and I saw a gentleman, and they sort of walked back towards that big open lot there by Lime Tree Bay, right? So when I crossed the police car, because the police car was still parked. So when I continued driving now, this car coming driving on the lawn there between Lime Tree Bay.
Quickly, caller. Don't make a story out of it for us. Just get to the point, please.
He was coming flying. And I could not believe that the officer didn't go and stop that car from driving the way it was driving. That's a lot of big on Cayman. They just do as you please. Yeah. I don't think so.
Thank you, Ms. Jan. Thank you. We're going to answer her queries afterwards. We want to take the next caller. I'm made to understand that Miss Lucille Seymour is on the line, so I'm sure that she'll always have something, to offer in the conversation. Miss Lucille, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Hi, good morning, my good Shedden Road neighbor.
Yes. How are you?
Briefly, I know because other people want to get on the line. But I want to listen. I want to support what Mr. Maxfield is saying about Miss Alex, his property.
Mm-hmm.
I too had some connection with it because I read her obituary, and in the obituary it said that she was leaving the property to the people of the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, I have made 3 contacts regarding the matter, but I'm glad it's topical now. I would like to say I'm no lawyer like my learned friend sitting there. But from what I have seen, I think the government have acquired the land twice. One, Miss Arlette gave it to them. 2, by the whole question of succession, she has left no heirs to this property, which means that under the law, the government acquires it, the residual property. So I know that Mr. Maxfield perhaps will be able to correct me or support me, whatever. but I would like to keep it in the minds of the people, because this is something that other countries do. They bequeath things to their government and to their people, and we should, barring that we're not taking away from families, we should try to assist in this and not deter it or keep it or not transfer it. This is going on 8 years now, and I believe that we need to talk to the relevant people. Legal, I think it is, more so than perhaps even the politicians, to ask, why is it that they didn't register? Why is it that they're lingering? And why is it that they want to remove the caveat? Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that it continues to be a topic.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lucille. Thank you, Mr. McPhail.
Well, yes. Yes, if you don't leave a will, and if you die intestate and you don't have any and people cannot take the property under the succession law, they're not within the classes of people that can inherit the property under the succession law. It goes bona vacanta to the crown. It goes to the crown and then is registered in the crown's name. I was so surprised when I realized just a few weeks ago, that the property had not been registered in the government's name, because the transfer says to the government of Cayman and the people of the Cayman Islands, and for 8 years it sat there, and nobody did anything about it. And it goes to show that that the law can be enforced, or people can do things because. Contrast that to the fact that I was parked down behind the library a couple of days ago, and all of a sudden I got a call from 911, asking me if my car was parked behind the library, and I says yes, and I thought there was some emergency for my family or something. I couldn't believe it. I thought something had happened to my house, and then they told me, the 911 operator told me I shouldn't park there anymore, that someone had complaining I was parking there. Now they could call 911 to tell me 911 is a national number for emergency, to tell me not to park there. That shows you that you can get things done if people want to.
Whose spot were you taking? I'm curious now.
Yeah, I was somebody's spot. I had taken, and
they called 911.
They called 911. So Miss Lucille, I would say that apart from the fact that there's now a legal confrontation about this property, that the government has been very negligent in not getting that done all of these years that the property had been transferred to them.
Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor, and as you can hear, with me in the studio this morning, we have Mr. Alan Steve McPhail, prominent local attorney, and we have Mr. Christopher Saunders, CPA, domino player, political pundit, everything else, a long resume like Mr. McPhail's. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guests in the studio with me this morning, Mr. Steve McPhail and Mr. Christopher Saunders. We want to go on to the big news in the Cayman Islands now, and the report from the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee membership. And before I go to that, I just want to mention some of the pros and cons in relation to the establishment of a minimum wage. And this is my material. I'm getting it on the internet, of course. Some of the pros in relation to the establishment of a minimum wage: it creates an economic stimulus, it creates more opportunities for jobs. And when they say that, it says if the minimum wage employees are spending more, then businesses are earning more and need to hire more employees to keep up with the increased sales from the minimum wage employees who are buying more. Whether or not in a small economy that will work, we're not sure, but that's one of the pros. Reduce expense for social programs. If people are earning more, then they should be relying less on the government. A decreased turnover rate, as well as it helps to address issues of inflation. If the minimum wage is raised, then it helps to reduce that. The cons: possible layoffs, of workers, possible price increases Employers might raise prices if their products in order to generate enough income to support their more highly paid minimum wage employees, which could ultimately create a ripple effect for other shops and industries, resulting in a slightly higher cost of living, resulting in another push to raise minimum wage. So it becomes a vicious circle. It could become a vicious circle as well. It could also result in fewer hirings. And we may also see increase an intensification of competition as a result of that. So there are pros and cons. But let's get to the real stuff. The headline is all about the $6 proposed minimum wage. When I first listened to part of the news conference, and I saw that the premier was a part of that news conference. And while a statement was made that it would be considered by cabinet and by caucus, it all appeared to me that if the premier is there, is he already endorsing what the minimum wage advisory committee has proposed? Is that an endorsement, despite the fact that we say that cabinet and caucus will consider it?
The one thing I will say, first and foremost, is that something had to be done. And I know this is supposed to be the slot where we pretty much oppose what the government does or proposes to do, but I think this is one time I can honestly say that this is a step in the right direction. Now, for me personally, it goes against the kind of free market system that I'm kind of used to some extent, but at the same time, I'll be the first to tell you that we have runaway capitalism in Cayman with none of the safeguards. And this in itself is a start of the safeguard, because there are a lot of people in this country that are being exploited because of their economic background, and it needs to stop. And the premier used an example. I was listening to the press conference last night on Radio Cayman, or the replay of it, sorry. He used an example about helper getting paid $60 a week. Well, I mean, 2 years ago I came across a situation where a living helper was being paid $800 a month, but then they were deducting $600 for living expenses and so forth. So our net take home was $200. And listen, there's no way, for people who have children, there's no way you can exploit somebody, take advantage of somebody's mother, grandmother, aunt, sister, or whatever, and believe that you're going to go through life. These are things they call blessing blockers. You just can't do that to people. You know what I mean? So at some point, the line had to be drawn. The flip side about it from an economic standpoint, if you look at generally where minimum wages, it normally benefits school leavers and people just entering the workforce for the first time. It gives them something. The only concern for me in pretty much all of this is when you look at countries that use minimum wage. I mean, I use the U.S. for example, where they use minimum wage. Why the governments will push for minimum wage or increases the minimum wage is that in the U.S., you get taxed as you earn. So if you're getting paid more, the government gets the tax same time. Where for the businesses, it's an expense that is tax deductible. And sometimes, depends on how the corporation structure themselves, the government may take a long time to collect that tax. So the employee gets it, the government gets their money instantly. The corporation pays or makes the benefit by not paying it. The government waits a while. And it depends on the corporate structure and all different kind of stuff. So one of the things that we just need to be careful of is that we're not taking policies from other countries that don't have a similar tax. Because one of my reasons for supporting it is that we're a consumption-based society. And the fact of the matter is we have a lot of people in this country that because of what they're earning cannot pay their fair share of our consumption tax. And many other families are forced to cover for them. I mean, that is the reality. Right now, you're still talking about over 2,000 people in a workforce of 38,000, I believe, or 35,000 thereabouts. So you're talking about just under 10%. That is already technical in a consumption-based society, not being able to afford to pay their own way, which means that is being picked up by somebody else. So it's a step in the right direction.
Okay. We have 2 callers online. Let's take those callers. First caller, good morning, and welcome to For the Record.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning, Rupert. How are you?
Good man, Auntie. You know, something hit me the other day. I was thinking about the this situation here, and when I think that how much it is the cost us to keep a prisoner in Northwood now, I think it was $60,000 or something a year.
$4,000 a year.
How much?
$6,000 to $4,000 a year.
$4,000.
6 to 4.
6 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Now my question is this, OC and gentlemen. Wouldn't it be better if we took $64,000 and educated? Because some of these guys, they go into Northwood, it's first time. We all sin and come short of the glory of God. We all got our nobody's perfect. But to castigate these people, these young people especially, I can understand hardened criminals that it's almost a profession with some people. But for a first time offender, and I think of people with talent like the boy did that from West Bay that had killed Miss Chichi and all that kind of thing. And he talented artist, never had the formal thing. But can you imagine people like that? People with other skills and stuff like that, find out what their skills is. And if we took $64,000, you know how many people we could educate and give them skilled, even skilled labor or professional stuff like accounting and all that kind. If you really looked at it from that standpoint, because punishing people definitely doesn't seem to help. It only makes them hardened criminals when you punish them, and then they come out. Finally get out, and then people look at them. They can't get a permit, a job because somebody is giving them a record, and they claim that they can't hire you because you did this. We have all sinned and come short of the glory, OC. So let us stop thinking about punishing people. Find out what their gifts are, their natural gifts. Try to steer them around, and we'll all be happy in Cayman. Mm-hmm. We won't have to worry about a lot of the stuff that I see going on now with these people that come out of there, and they have no.
So true, but remember now, not everyone is redeemable. Not in our world.
Yes.
In the eyes of the Lord, yes. No, but I tell you, sorry, I just want to come in. I think Rupert raised a very valuable point, because if there's one thing that I think we as a people, and I say we as a people, have failed, we have not invested in our people properly. And I give you a good example, and maybe Steve himself can comment a little bit on this. I've seen people where they get in court for traffic offenses, vehicle not registered, and they get a fine. When you look at these people, many of them can't afford to have the vehicle registered, can't afford to have the insurance. So, but naturally, they need their vehicle on this island to go to work so they can feed for their families. So it's a matter of prioritizing what can get paid. They take their chances. Rather than turn around now and put a financial burden on this person to say, oh, go find $300, $400, $500 or $1,000, which if they had it, they wouldn't have been in that situation to be. Why don't we look at community service?
Yes.
I mean, sit down and say to somebody, listen, you're a bad boy, we understand things tight, but you know what? Go clean up the streets or go do something, but use community service as something.
Good point. Rupert, you still there? He's gone. Let's grab the next caller. Caller, good morning. No calls. Okay. Let's go back to the minimum wage. When I look at the composition of the advisory committee, and despite the fact that they had meetings and they had focus groups and all of that, the element that is sorely missed from this is the representation of the workers
of the poor.
Themselves.
The poor workers.
They're not represented in this. They are, and I'm not sure whether or not the advisory committee were able to hear some of the stories from domestic helpers and others in terms of what they endure in this country as far as their salaries are concerned.
Yeah, I listened to all the statistics there. The statistics were very brilliant, put together. But the thing is that those people who were on the panel, they represent the elite, the worker, the scientists, the fundraisers, the lawyers, the doctors, the staff. There's no need for minimum wage for them because they can look after themselves. What was missing was what the Honorable Dr. Linford Pearson called the little man. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were missing from the there was no little man representation there, and I agree 100% that there should be a minimum wage, because the government has to protect the poor, the less educated, and the less fortunate workers from the greed of the employers and the capitalists. And And the one thing that I say is it's a small step in the right direction. I would have wished to see a higher figure, because I would challenge anyone today that they should go and, if they have savings, they should go and spend their savings and then go and try to live off the minimum wage and see how they're going to pay the light bill, how they're going to pay the water bill, and how they're going to pay the mortgage, and how they're going to send their children to school, and how they're going to and how they're going to exist in this society. I challenge anyone to do that and tell me if you can live off $6 $6 an hour.
Okay, we have one caller online. Let's take that caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. O'Connor.
Good morning, Amjad. How are you?
Mr. McField and Mr. Chris.
Good morning.
Morning.
First, always I enjoy this day when those two fine gentlemen is in the radio. You listen to very fine, intelligent, useful conversation. So I thank them always for coming to the radio and try to provide solutions and try to discuss really what is interest the people, the poor people of this country. And I pick up where Mr. McField said, well said, when he said anyone can live, no one can live with $6 minimum wage. I think it is very impossible. Those sitting in the committee, really they need to consider the poor people before they consider the business people, because the business people making a lot of money. They're raising the prices. If you see the prices of food, it's been raised last year 3 times, 3 different times being raised because of the issue of the gas. Now the gas going down.
But the prices haven't gone down.
Never gone down. And then the other electricity and never gone down. The amount, it should go down, and maybe it gone down a little bit, the electricity, but it is not in the same size of the amount of reducing of prices of fuel. So what I'm saying today is the $8, I think, is the best minimum wage for this country. This is an expensive country to live in. And the resident of this country can't afford to work for $6, because that will not solve the poor people problem. Never will solve the people problem. Yes, it is a step in the right direction to put a minimum wage, because it's a slavery for someone to work $3.50. We shouldn't have a modern day slavery, which people slave other people and let them work for $4 and $3. This is not a pay. It is a slavery. It is a modern day slavery that somebody work and earn less than $8 in this country. Even $6.90 is not a minimum wage. Even $7.90 is not the minimum wage we look in. I think the $8 and up is the right minimum wage, because the poor people need to pay their bills. They have the right to survive as those rich people this government looking after. I think the business people need to pay their duty to the society by paying $8 minimum wage. Thank you, Mr. McField and Mr. Chris and Mr. O'Connor for this important topic, and I will keep listening to this very intelligent conversation.
Thank you
Thank you.
Thank you, Amjad. We need to go to a commercial break now, folks. You're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guests, Mr. Steve McField and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Please stay tuned. We will be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where we're discussing the announcement of the report of the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee and the recommendation, the main recommendation that the minimum wage should stand at $6 CI per hour. Recommendations that will now be considered by Cabinet and by caucus, and we hope that it will be whatever is accepted or decided, that it will be soon put into legislation. When we look at the main objective of the exercise, which was, quote unquote, to address exploitation and provide real relief to the lower paid workers. That was the objective, and I'm quoting here from the speaking notes that were given. Based on the figure that we have, the $6 figure, and we've heard some of our callers express the fact that it should be higher. Does a $6 minimum wage help to address exploitation? Does it provide real relief to lower paid workers?
Not to the Cayman worker. It provides some relief from the foreign worker, from those who come and are doing the menial jobs like security guards and the domestic workers and those kinds of people like that. Because if you listen to the broadcast last night, it said that some of those people are already getting paid more than the minimum wage.
And that's going to be my next question to you, which is some people are concerned, and if you're already making more than a minimum wage, will it affect you? Does it mean that your salary will drop to the minimum wage?
Not
I would
really.
imagine that people would be grandfathered in. Those persons who are already at a particular wage would be grandfathered in to the legislation.
It shouldn't, because
you shouldn't be any worse off.
Shouldn't be any worse off, because that's the minimum they can pay you.
Yes.
And if you were talking earlier about the honorable premier, if you notice what he said, and to a question, I think it was by Brian or one of those people, he said that the figure of $6 was the same thing that he had in mind. You remember that? The figure of $6 that the commission found to be that were recommended the same figure that he had in mind. So it seems to me that is the figure that we are going to get.
Yeah. Well, one of the positives with this is that we did have someone from the International Labor Organization that was on that committee that assisted them. So they did have some expertise in relation to minimum wage, as well. We have a caller. 3 callers online. You want to try to take at least one caller before we go to the headline news. So caller, we're going to ask you to be brief. You have about 3 minutes. Please go ahead. Good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Morning, gentlemen. Number one from the Bronx.
Number one, morning. How are you?
I'm trying to live. Special good morning to Mr. McPhee.
Good morning, number one from the Brock.
Yeah.
I hope I will see you soon next week or sometimes.
Yeah, well, I'm going up Sunday because I'm right here with you.
Yes.
I just called to ask this, if any of you, all 3 of you, whichever one, can try and put this to the government to try and get that government channel on the Brock. Sorry if I broke up what you're talking about.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll try to find out why it isn't, and what are the issues are in relation to getting it over there, and get an answer for you.
Yes, Mr. McPhee, you look into it too.
What was that again?
Government channel.
Channel 20. It's
Channel
not available
20
in CIG TV.
But the government has their own Channel 20 now. But it's through some other media. It's through some other independent station.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So what that would be West Star?
Yes, it comes through West Star. We have our GIS representative right here, a cameraman. He doesn't have a mic in front of him, but he can tell us exactly what the story is on that.
Well, all right. I've called them myself. I didn't know that's how it went. I will call West Star myself and tell them so.
And we'll try to find out what the technical difficulties, if there are any technical difficulties,
we don't need
what they are.
Technical. If we can get Cayman 27, we can get that one too. All right?
Okay,
have a good day, because I'm listening to all of you.
Thanks, number one. Folks, you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guest in the studio with me, Mr. Steve McPhee, Mr. Christopher Saunders. We're going to go to the headline news now. I want to also remind you that For the Record is brought to you today by LED, Lighting Engineering and Design. For the callers online, we ask you to hold tight. We're going to be back right after headline news, which is not going to be long. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. We have 2 callers online still, I believe. We're going to take those callers right away. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC.
Good morning, Roops. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Good morning, Mr. McFeel and Mr. Saunders.
Good morning,
Morning.
sir. Good morning.
I had no intention of calling this morning, but as I listen, you know, wisdom is known of her children. You see? Will it not be better for us to set a minimum wage at $6 an hour or lose what we have? Business, as you know and I know, don't operate without profit.
Exactly. Yep.
So we will cripple our business if we follow some people's advice.
And the $6 is a start.
$6 is a start. It's much more than some is getting now. And our people is going to have to realize that this is not the year when everything was high in the economy. Everything was working for us. This happens to be the time when we had to feel our way. And $6 may not seem to be much, but we can always add to it. But if you hit business too high, they're going to close their doors. Remember? The money people got the money, they can go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And
And
poor people got to stay here.
yeah, and the objective was to a minimum wage, not necessarily a living wage, which would have been ideal.
Yeah.
But you know, that wasn't the objective.
No. If we have established something now, because our people are hurting, but our people got to realize that they are hurting, and half a loaf, as the old folks always said, is better than none at all. Take it, do your best, enable the people who hire you to pay more.
Yeah.
Right? We mustn't get lost in our thoughts and get carried away by those who don't care. They would ruin the economy. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Roop.
You have a good day.
You have a good day and a good weekend as well. Thank you very much. Next caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Woosey.
Good morning, Mr. Hurlston. How are you?
Just fine, sir. Good morning, Mr. McFeel.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Saunders.
Morning.
Gentlemen, you know, this is something sort of near and dear to me.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, I will maintain, and I know I might stand alone on this point, it is unenforceable. We don't have direct income tax. We can't enforce the law. What I'd like to say is this. A person should not be in business if you don't think you can make a reasonable profit out of it. It should never be. Should not be. That is my feelings, and I don't intend to change my feelings on that. There are people making quite a bit of money for themselves by paying people $3 and $4 an hour. We cannot deny this fact.
Mm-hmm.
It is happening.
Mm-hmm.
It is happening. The statistics office, we know that we get all our statistics from them or our records and whatever you want to see. But it is at best not even an educated guess because of no direct income tax. There are no returns made to government of what people have made, their salaries paid, the companies' money that they have earned, their total revenue, what they have paid their directors or their managers or their owners. There's nothing on what profit the owners have made. And there's nothing to hold their fingers to the fire to say that your profit that you're claiming are going to be very, very limited because you're going to be paying $6 an hour now. We know that that can be disproven only if you have direct income tax. So you must make returns to your government or you are closed down. The thing is, when they say it's going to cost $17 million, when I heard it, I just heard a little bit of it. Right? The premier saying you're committed. It is nice, and I commend him for that, and I commend Rivers and all those under Mr. Lemuel Hurlstone for the job he did, because it's difficult. The 17 million, I thought that immediately struck me as something like when they abolished slavery, the British, and for all the colonies, the slave owners were paid. They set aside £20 million to pay all the colonies because they wanted it to be a smooth transition. They know the merchants and the slave owners were getting up and getting upset and saying, now I'll be a poor man and I'll be broke. One of the bodies did say that to the British Governor Sligo when he came here with that document of 1835. But the reality is they would not be broke. They'd not be broke. It's just that we've transitioned it to nowadays. A person who has $300,000 or $400,000 cars for his family, and with the living wage part of it, and he sends one of his sons or daughters to $100,000 a year Ivy League University. He knows that his living wage to maintain his lifestyle, which is what I call living wage, it's flexible. It depends on what a lifestyle you have. The minimum wage is a totally different thing. He needs $78,000 a week. And that's what he intends to make. And that's the profit he intends to make from his business. Whether his people are getting $4 an hour are barely able to even pay their bus fare to come to work, it is no concern of his. I'm a realist.
Okay. Yep. Caller, I'm going to ask you to leave us there. We're running out of time, and we have two more callers on the line. So I want to thank you very much for your comments. And my comment will be, I'm still waiting for some of our ultra-rich Caymanians to do like what Warren Buffett and Bill Gates have done and say, they're going to leave all of their riches, to society and give. I'm waiting for some rich Caymanian to say that as well, rather than thinking that they can take it to the grave with them. We have another caller online. Let's take that caller. Caller, good morning. Two callers, actually. Caller, good morning, and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And I hope that you had a lovely Easter time.
Thank you very much, and same to you, man.
Thanks. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. You keep mentioning on your show, and thank you for doing that we are a brother's keeper. The suggestion or the recommendation of $6 an hour is below what I had hoped. I was kind of looking between, well, I thought $8 seemed to be a fair figure.
That seems to be the common thread, in terms of people felt that $8 would have probably been satisfactory.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do understand that there are individuals when it comes to persons who say they want to hire someone to work in their home or to babysit and those things. And many of those individuals, and this is truthfully speaking, are not able to pay $8 an hour. Mm-hmm. But they do the best that they can with what they have. However, back to being your brother's keeper, it is important that those persons, those business people and others who can afford to pay should take into consideration it is not fair, it is not right in the sight of God or man that you should make a huge profit in your business, and the those individuals who are working with you are not even able to say, well, listen, 1 hour's pay here can buy me a decent lunch. And many of these individuals also have families, and it works out to approximately $50 a day or slightly less. which for a 5-day week, as you know, would be $250, which is around $1,000 a month. It is difficult to take into consideration if you don't own a car, bus fare, electricity, water, food, everything else that goes with it. And so it is. I leave it to the conscience of the persons who can afford to do so, and they need to realize that many of us have to stick with just what you're saying. We are a brother's keeper, and too many have gotten themselves into a lifestyle that if their bottom line isn't thus and so, they cannot afford to maintain that lifestyle and still put money in the bank.
Yep.
And I believe that every right-thinking individual in Cayman, be they resident, Caymanian by birth, a status grant holder, it doesn't matter who it is, you need to understand that when someone comes and gives you a good day's work, they deserve a good day's pay.
Thank you very much, caller.
This is a start. $6 is a start, and I would not want to know that we would go for less than that, but I am also hoping that many out there, whether or not government dictates $6 a minimum, that the others will realize, listen, I can pay more than this. Let me do it.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. And we've seen that happen in other jurisdictions as well, where people, businesses have said we're going to go beyond, what the law calls for, and we're going to give more. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. We're going to go to a short break, and for those callers that we have on hold, please hold tight. We'll be back shortly. Morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have one caller online. We're going to take that caller and we're going to ask the caller to be as brief as possible because we're running out of time. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning. This is Dr. Quincy Brown speaking. How are you, Mr. Connor?
Good morning, Dr. Brown. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine as sifted flour. Now, minimum wage seems to be the topic today. And
one of them, yeah?
One of them, right. I've been tuned in. So $6, it should have been $6 20 years ago. Nobody in this country should work for, particularly those doing manual labor and those doing menial tasks. It should be $10 an hour. That's my opinion. All right, Mr. Obama had a great time in Jamaica.
And Jamaica had a great time with him, yeah.
he had a wonderful time in Jamaica. It was a very successful trip. And I am calling all politicians in this country that loves Cayman, meet me on the steps of the Legislative Assembly. I will be there. And finally, we need to continue to support our tourism ambassadors. I have the wonderful opportunity to sit with a dear friend of mine, Miss Anne-Marie, also known as the hairstyle lady, who continues to work with the tourists. And as you come off the flight and you land at the airport, her beautiful picture is right there smiling. These are the kind of tourism ambassadors that we need, working with the people hand in hand. And the hairstyle, let me tell you something, we want to get an annual hairstyle competition going. We're going to ask Corporate Cayman to be major sponsors because the hairstyle thing that's going here, it's a wonderful something, and I would like to see it go on because it's all about promoting Cayman and the tourism product. Mr. Connor, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you very much, Quincy, and you have a great day.
And you do the same. Please remind the politicians to meet me on the steps of the Legislative Assembly.
Okay. When is that? Today? Gentlemen, we have about 11 minutes left, and I'm going to be extremely gracious this morning. And I'm going to give both of you, the 10 minutes to talk about what you want to talk about, because I bring you on here. We take all of the questions. We get to discuss some of the issues, but we have to share that discussion with our audience as well, and sometimes they may come back with something else. So you each have 5 minutes this morning. Who wants to start?
I'll go first. I think Amjad and many of the callers who called in had raised some very good points with regards to the minimum wage. One of the things that we need to be careful of, and if we look back at the Cayman economy, at the point in which we had our peak employment, when we had the most people employed, 80% of the people were employed by small businesses. What we basically brought in is that we overburden a lot of the small businesses with costs, we brought in a pension cost, we brought in health insurance, and now in essence we're bringing in also a minimum wage. So once again, I mean, people need to understand that it's still the same pot where money just moving around. I mean, if the employers be paying more, it just means it's less for the employer. So the stuff that he used to do extra, that will also get cut. So we need to understand that everything is a relationship. You know what I mean? So that has to be factored in. When we start looking at, and one of the things I've been working on for the last few weeks is the price of the Caymanian dream. In the United States, it basically said that to achieve the American dream now, you have to be earning about 130,000 US. And with that American dream comes a certain lifestyle. If we were to, I mean, I won't even bother try to even equate the American dream in Cayman. It's not going to happen. But if you take, for example, a basic mortgage of $1,200, utilities of maybe $300-400, gas maybe $200, food anywhere from $500 to $700 a month, and you start looking at that cost, even if you were to take a family where someone say, you know what, I want to go and I want to start a family, you're still talking about a minimum roughly $2,400-2,500 a month. Even if you're working $50 hours a week at $6 and you're a husband and wife, that's still just $2,400. So for husband and wife as a couple, as a relationship, yes, because we also need to factor in that our society wasn't built on one person taking the entire burden, but rather two. So if you even have 6 people, the question is then, can $12 really carry a household, and then expect people, in other words, to grow a population? Now, bearing in mind, health, pension, and all that kind of stuff needs to come out of that money also. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of factors to come into play. But at the same time, we're business people kind of absorb certain costs in the sense of giving up something. A lot of small businesses can't. And one of the callers that spoke about earlier about people having a conscience. The reason why we have laws is because people have no conscience. Because if everyone had a conscience, we wouldn't be in this situation. So it is important. I said, kudos to the government. It is a campaign promise that they made. The Premier said before that was one of the things he regretted when he was Minister of Labor. So it is a starting point. You look in the United States, I think the average minimum wage is about $7.25 US, which is roughly around almost $6 CI anyway. But at the same time, the prices there are cheaper, even though in some cases some of them are actually paying taxes and that kind of stuff. So it's a give and take. And one of the things, it's very easy for us to go back and look at what it was before and what the good old days was and all that kind of stuff. But the reality of it is, those good old days are not coming back. What we need to look at is not to discuss the old way, but rather, here is the new way, here's the new reality. How do we chart a new way? Because one of the things that we are missing in, and I've seen many people make that mistake, they speak about the economy as if though it is some abstract type thing. The economy is people. We can give all these quantitative measures, GDP is going up, this is going up, that is going up. But at the end of the day, when you start looking at the qualitative measures, measuring people's lives, our people's lives being improved. I mean, at the end of the day, the Caymanian dream cannot be people just working just to pay bills, can't afford to save for their retirement, can't afford to save for their kids' future. They just work till they die. That cannot be the Caymanian dream. That cannot be what people work for. And I mean, I use my old example. My mother is now thinking about retirement. She had to wait literally until my father passed to consider retirement. Because of his health situation, she needed health insurance, and she also needed to ensure that he stayed comfortable because of basically AC had to be running literally 24/7 while he was home. If it got too hot, his blood pressure and everything else would go up. So as a result, now, rather than she having her golden years where she could sit back, enjoy the sunset with my father, literally it has to be where she has to go through this alone, simply because she had to keep working. Mm-hmm. And this cannot be the country that we're building. I mean, this can't be what it is about. But anyway, I will yield the rest of the time to Mr. McFeel, and thanks very much for that.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Mr.
Well,
McFeel.
thank you, OC. I really want to applaud the government for taking the first simple step towards rectifying the economic position of some people in the country. As one of the callers said, a minimum wage is better than no minimum wage at all. A minimum wage of $6 is better than no minimum wage at all. I applaud the government for this. It's a first step. Although I'm not satisfied with the amount, it's the first step, and I applaud them for doing it. Because I believe it's going to help to unify the country. And the unity I speak of is the unity of people, not the unity of money and profit. Because the people of this country must have a share in the wealth of their country. We have created an imbalanced system where the insiders and the privileged ones can retire with millions and millions of dollars, and the poor remain poor, unemployed, and not able to compete for the slave labor wages, and they have to do this until they die. That system has prevented their children from being able to change the downward spiral of their families, and the crime but what I think is against humanity, and I think the whole thing is against the Bill of Rights, where people have to are kept in a poor state, because too many people are promised the ideal life on the start, and they refuse to put their people in position where they can earn their own bread and their own butter, and instead they create a system that's imbalanced, and that people, as a result of that, had to resort to all kinds of underhanded things and criminality to be able to live. I think that I applaud the government for this. I hope that it can be implemented soon, and that it's not one of these things that they do for cosmetics, for political cosmetics, and then later on you hear that this faction didn't agree, or this faction was against it. Unless we cannot continue this country, unless we're a united force in this country, and unless we try to eliminate the poverty, and we give the poor and those underprivileged people a chance to have a place in the whole social contract. Because if we don't do that, if we don't help each other, if we don't do what it says every time that he signs off, if we don't be our brother's keeper, I'm afraid we're going to lose this country, and this country is too good to lose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maxfield, for that. Just want to add also that the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee, not only did they provide a report, but they also suggested the legislative amendments that need to take place, in terms of the laws, which is a good thing, because that again will help to make the government's job much easier. Legislative drafting, it will assist them as well, and as a result of that, could probably speed up the process in terms of getting these amendments through the legislature. Would you agree with that, Mr. Maxfield?
I agree, and the government now has the people in their departments. They have enough staff that they can get it done. And what I would do if I was the premier, I would right away give this to a set of people and say, give me this legislation within 3 or 4 months. That's what I would do. I would challenge them. Yeah. Like the former minister, I don't know if he's listening, Mr. Ard McLean, when we were on the board of the National Roads Authority, and we were talking about building the East-West Arterial Way, and he came in and we were waffling about how we were going to get it done, where we were going to get the money, and he came and said, well, let me tell you something. If you can't get it done, I'll find somebody else to do it.
Yep. And I just wanted we talked about U.S. President Obama's visit to Jamaica. And one of the huge announcements that he made also there was that the United States is much closer to having Cuba removed from the State Department's list of sponsors of terrorism. That's going to be big. I thought, and it appears as if it is something that can be done through executive order as opposed to needing the consent of the Congress, which is good. You know, again, we're going to see between now and the election in 2016, we're going to see a lot of big things happening in the U.S. as far as President Barack Obama is concerned, and you know his agenda and what he wants done. A lot of people said, "Oh, he didn't deliver on his promises." There were many promises that he couldn't deliver on. You know, in the first 4 years of his presidency, or even in the first 2 years, you know, of this second term. But there are things that he can deliver later on that he doesn't have to worry about the politics of it. And we also see that Hillary Clinton, the worst kept secret in the world, that I think it's on Sunday or something like that, she's going to be announcing her candidacy for the presidency. That's the worst kept secret.
I would love to see a
in the
woman
world.
president.
Yes. Well, I think that, you know, many of the critics of Obama do not understand the ramifications, the significance of a black man becoming president of the United States of America.
And changing the world.
Changing the world. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, to be president while you're still shooting and killing black people and assassinating them.
Yeah. That reminds me, we had one caller who was wondering whether or not when we see all of the police atrocities in the U.S. and the shooting of innocent, unarmed, I shouldn't say innocent, but at least unarmed people, whether or not police officers in the Cayman Islands should start wearing video cams so that we can see body cameras, they call them, you know, as well. That will be a topic for another day, gentlemen. Folks, I want to remind you that you've been listening to For the Record. I have been your host, Ort Connor, and I have been, again, honored to have as my guest in the studio with me this morning, Mr. Alan Steve McPhail and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Two gentlemen who you've heard some of our callers, in particular Amjad, say he likes the conversation when they're on For the Record, and I know that you or all of our listeners enjoy it as well. I also want to thank you, our listeners, for allowing us into your homes, into your automobiles, into your places of work. And I remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. And I say to you, employers, those of you who are in a position to pay more than the minimum wage, you want to be a good corporate citizen, you want to make the headlines, announce today or tomorrow or Monday that you are going to be increasing the wages, the minimum wage for your employers, not to $6, but to $8. Take the lead, or $10. Take the lead. That will make you a good corporate citizen, and you will sleep well at night as well. I want to remind you to continue to listen to Radio Cayman Talk today, where I think Catherine is still co-hosting. Dwayne seems to be on a long vacation. On Monday, we expect to have the Honorable Tara Rivers, Minister of Education and Labor, with us. We know that we had promised that Minister Tibbetts would be coming back on to continue the discussion on the Georgetown Revitalization Project, as well as the other issues and projects that are taking place on the island. We see where work has already commenced on Godfrey Nixon Way, and I believe some work is being done at nights as well. I believe that was probably one of the most challenging areas to widen the road because of existing businesses being so close to the road, but they're working on it and it seems to be going well. So we hope to have Minister Tibbetts on soon as well, but I will have to work the phones now and talk to both ministries so that we can get some agreement, as well. And remember that For the Record was brought to you by LED Lighting, Engineering and Design, located on Dorsey Drive in Industrial Park. And if you want to have low light bills, electrical bills like Miss Georgette, see those people over there because they have some energy saving equipment. Again, Thanks for listening. God bless. Have a great weekend.